recording. Okay.
Hello, hello. Good morning. How are you all today? Okay, so please excuse my voice. I have had laryngitis most of the month, and this is one of the first days I can actually talk a little bit, so I sound like a frog. So anyway, welcome. Let me go ahead and do a few announcements first. I always forget, and so this time I wrote notes. So our future speakers. So next month, we're going to have John Jay. He is on the Charter Review Commission. And so he'll give us a little update of what's happening at the Charter Review. And then in June, we'll have Eileen O'Brien. Maybe most of you know her as Eileen Quiring. She was the chair of the Clark County Council for years. Well, she's running for auditor. So she'll be our June speaker. So I don't have anybody else planned for the rest of the year, which brings me to a couple things. So I could really use some help with the forum because, like, if I had been really super sick today and couldn't speak at all, I wouldn't want to cancel at the last minute. So it'd be nice to have, you know, a couple of more people to kind of help me with, you know, planning and, you know, what if I get sick or something, you know. So I need a number 2, number 3, number 4. So if you'd be interested in helping me, just let me know, okay? So one of the things I wanted to ask you all are ideas for future speakers. And, oh, where did he go?
I'll put that.
He was up there. So one of the people I would like to have come is Dave Larson. So I think I've had him here a few years ago when he ran for Supreme Court before. So he is a judge. He'll be running for our state Supreme Court. So, so one of my questions though, would you like to have a candidate forum? The Democrats do this every year, it's a great idea, where they have all of their endorsed candidates come. You know, and they have, every one of them gets up and gives a little 5-minute speech. They each have a table around the room, then you get to talk to all of them. Would you like to have something like that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So the next question is, do you want to have it after the primary, so you're just going to be talking to the candidates that are in, or before the primary where you're going to be, that's a lot of people. I have no idea. May is filing week.
Let's do that.
I kind of, my personal thing is, let's do it, so August is the primary, August 4th. So I'm thinking September, because then we'll have weeded out everybody. Okay, does that sound good?
Yeah.
Oh, good, thank you. Okay, so now the next thing is, so because we're the first Wednesday of the month, that means we're always the day after primary election, the day after the November election, right? So those are kind of like days of like, well, what do you do on that day, you know? So, and our surprise guest has arrived. We weren't sure if he was coming, but Mr. John Lee is in the building. So thank you for coming, John. John, come on up here. Come sit up front so you can kind of answer questions when necessary. So that's great. Thank you for coming.
Maybe I'll let him do the presentation.
No, you're doing the presentation, but John will jump in whenever you have questions. So do you all know John?
No.
John Lee, he is our state rep for LD 18. Okay, I'll make sure I got that right, 18. So anyway, where was I? Okay, so one of the things John Jay has offered to do is, rather than coming as in his official capacity as Charter Review Commissioner, he teaches a class at Clark College on our founding fathers and the Constitution and the founding of our country. And he said he'd love to come and do an hour presentation on just the founding of our country. So, sound good? Okay, so I'm thinking like maybe the day after the primary, and then I'm thinking the day after the election, let's just take the day off. Okay, I mean, everybody's like had it up to here, you know, so maybe even December, take November and December off and just take a break, come back in January. But anyway, so that just basically leaves July. So who do you want here in July?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, okay, I'll invite him. Anybody else? John Braun, that's a big one. John Braun is currently running for CD3. Another fellow that's running, his name is, so I don't want to do this during our time. I'm thinking of doing it remember a couple of years ago, Phil Landisberg and I put together a evening event with both the candidates for, it would be for LD17. So that would be Kevin Waters and David Stevie against Ben Chrisley and Darlene Harless?
Yeah,
Is that, am I right? Anyway, they're candidates. So then Phil and I asked them questions back and forth, and they both answer questions. So would you like to have an evening of that? Okay, Phil and I have talked about it, we haven't made a date. But that would be an evening thing, so that it would be, much bigger, because it would be a combined event. So anybody else, I still got that July slot? If you think of something, you have a particular person you really want to hear for a whole hour, okay, let me know. Depends on who I can get. Okay, other things. So if you're interested, a couple of big things coming up. The Clark County Republican Party's Lincoln Day dinner is April 18th. The theme is the Golden Age. So I'll tell you what, if you are on my email list, I will send you the links to all of these things. If you're not on my email list, please let me know and I'll get you on there. The CCR, how about it? I don't think I see anybody in here in the Clark County Republican Women's Club. So I just have been, I'm on the board in training. It's a fun club. So it's very informative. We meet every other month. It's not a meeting, it's a dinner. And then we have speakers and other things. We do barbecues and stuff. It's fun and informative and educational. So let me know if you want information about that. And then Eileen Quiring's kickoff I gotta get used to O'Brien. Eileen O'Brien, so she's been married for 3 years now, but I still can't get used to it. Her kickoff for auditor is May 7th. And like I say, if you're on my email list, I will try to send you all these things, okay? All right, and now we will let Rick Vermeers, so again, I wanted to introduce Rick again. He's been here a couple times. So he's on a couple committees currently. So we have these, there he is, okay. All right, he's a certified election observer, chair of the Republican Election Integrity Team. So the election integrity team is just basically, you tell them what it's about. So let's see, so this is the one, this is the new legislative bill tracking. And I was on the team too. I basically my contribution was making an Excel spreadsheet, that's about it.
she's a hard worker. She helps us out a lot.
Yeah, but these guys are the brains. So basically what we did this time, like I say, he and Bob Runnels were head of the team. They just kept track of all the bills. Do you know how many bills they're running constantly? Ask this guy. It's just constant. And it was really hard to keep up with them. So these guys tried to just kind of zero in on the ones that they thought were the worst or the best, and then tried to keep the rest of us informed. There's a way that those of us, and both you and Bob went up and testified.
No, Bob went up. I testified.
Remotely?
online. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the rest of us just went online and you can vote pro-con online. So the rest of us just did that. So anyway, it was this is a new team that the Republican Party just started this year, the legislative team, which should really be more organized and keep people informed. So, Rick, I will let you take over.
Sure. So the reason that Judge Larson's picture was up there was 10 minutes ago, I got a phone call from him, and I actually had his phone number on my phone, and he called me and he says, would you be willing to help get me elected to the Supreme Court? And I said, absolutely. In fact, I said, I've already started on that. So that's why his picture was up there.
Rick, can I have you scoot a little bit closer to the screen?
No,
No, please. Okay,
Right there?
that's better.
Is that better?
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So a little story behind this. I have long taken the publication that's put out by Fuse Washington, which is a progressive organization, and every election, they talk about all the people they would like to promote. And the reason I do this is because for judge positions, it's really hard to get good information about who to vote for. But they give out really good information on who not to vote for. When they tell me to vote for so-and-so because of this and this and this, I vote for the opposite. So as a result, they put on a little Zoom conference just before the legislature convened, and they said, this is what we want to get done in the legislature this time. And so I took some screenshots. So their biggest thing was the millionaire's tax, the Washington Fund, a stopgap for HR 1, so they wanted to pour more money into that. Capital gains expansion, initiative integrity, they would love to not have initiatives in the state at all, because they don't line up with their ideas. And then, of course, they wanted to unmask law enforcement. So this shows you what passed and failed out of that group. And obviously, everybody knows about the millionaire's tax. So I'll start off with 1916, which it criminalizes voter registration challenges. And I believe that is aimed squarely at Clark County. We have a group within our election integrity team which goes out and challenges voters who either are not in the proper registered areas, maybe they're even from out of state. And the latest thing that we've done is Maryland is challenging deceased voters who are still on the voter rolls. And so we've got some that have been there, they'd be 100 years old if they were still alive. So she has got a system through, there's a national group called ELLI, which allows you to go in and test voters. So like if you have a voter that's 100 years old, it will tell you that they're 100 years old, but it will also link you to their obituary or link you to the funeral home where they died. So we had, she got a list for Clark County. There were 33 deceased voters who lived in other states prior to death, and she was able to get 33 out of 33 removed from the voter rolls using that system. She's also been effective at duplicate voters across the state. So this was aimed at her. They do not want people from this county helping other counties clean up their voter rolls. And it passed. Okay, we all know about the tax on millionaires, 9.9% on individuals. And one of the interesting things about this was how many people commented against it and how many people commented for it. And it was like 80-20. And the Democrats immediately came out and said, well, you have a bunch of people that commented more than once. And I thought, well, that can happen. There's no prohibition in that. So I went in and looked at the number of people who commented multiple times, both pro and con. So the con people, the people that didn't want the millionaire's tax, there were just over 1,100 of them that commented multiple times. But on the pro side, there were 1,500 people that commented multiple times. So there was nothing to their claims. John, do you have any comments on that one?
Just thank you for everybody that commented. It caused a great deal of consternation amongst those on the left side of the political aisle.
Okay, this one is kind of self-explanatory. I don't know why anyone would want this to happen, but non-citizens to have the roles that are called out here, deputy prosecuting attorneys, elected to law enforcement, limited law enforcement. So that passed, and it was an emergency, which really floored me. I can't imagine why that would be such an emergency. So that's why it's effective already. Protecting the voter registration database. This is the one where the DOJ went in and said, hey, I want to look at your voter base because the DOJ thought that there may be people who are not legal citizens in the base, and the Attorney General or the Secretary of State said, oh no, I've got to protect your voter database because your driver's license is in that voter database. Well, what he was really trying to do is protect himself, in that he knows that if the DOJ gets a hold of that, there are going to be lots and lots of people who are not legal citizens in that database. And as a handout, I have something that I wrote up for Clark County today, so that you can take it.
Yeah, it's at the table back there.
Later when you leave. But it passed. And this is just my little list. These are the people in Clark County that we've seen that have voted or tried to vote, and they were non-citizens. And it tells, the first one, she voted 28 times, and then you go down the ones that are under investigation. Susan Chamberlain voted 19 previous elections. So this one is the Attorney General's office, and basically, wait a minute, I think I screwed that up. So this one is with the sheriffs. The sheriffs can now be kicked out of office basically by the governor, and the governor can appoint a new sheriff. So there's been a big push in the state to move away from citizen control and voter control and more into the area of governor and attorney general and secretary of state control. So this one's really odd because it started out being setting it up so that people overseas could vote electronically, and that kind of got stripped out of the bill as time went on. And then they wanted to allow tribal members to vote electronically. And I can't imagine how you could vote securely electronically, but hey, maybe it'll come someday. I'm not seeing it. But at least it got watered down to the point where they can try it out on tribes and see if it works. And Hobbs is really against this, so I'm not sure how that one is going to go. This one, maybe John can help me out on this one, because there was a case where a person voted in Oregon and then voted in Washington, and it went to court, and it went to the appeals court, and the appeals court said, well, if it isn't the same election, we're going to allow it. So you can vote as long as it isn't on the same day in another state, you can come into Washington and vote in Washington as well. So, John, do you have any comments on that one?
So, this was a tough challenge.
Well, there's a microphone right behind you.
It was a tough challenge. The way the Democrats framed this was that you are voting for election integrity if you vote in favor of this. And there was an intense discussion in the Republican House members saying, this is wrong. And part of the response was, yes and no, there's a court case. And the court case says the current state law is wrong, and this is a fix. Well, in reality, it's only a small fix. It doesn't fix the whole problem. And how Jim Walsh, as one of our key leaders, framed it was a small fix is better than no fix, and then we come back next year and try to implement an even broader fix. And I'd had a conversation with our state election integrity chair, and he was like, John, we don't want to go down this. And literally, as we were walking out to vote on this and another bill, somebody said, John, do you want your opponent to advertise when they run against you, you voted against election integrity? And I'm like, but that's not the truth. And he says, but that's what the ad will be. And so at the end, we all pinched our nose and voted yes. But definitely many of us didn't like it.
All right, thanks, John. That clarifies a lot of things for me. Okay, then there's Senate Bill 5855 makes the ICE agents take their masks off so that everybody can see who they are, so that they can be doxxed by whoever in the public. So it's, you know, a few years back, everybody had to wear a mask. Now they can't wear a mask, but the bad guys can still wear masks. So, this is right up my alley because my background is in transmission. So what the state did in this bill was they created what I would call a small Bonneville Power Administration at the state level. And it's supposed to be to help green energy move along. Well, obviously the people that framed this have no idea what it costs to build transmission. They had $2 million at the maximum in their budget over the next 3 years to build this, to set this up. 1 mile of transmission costs $2 million.
Yeah.
There's no way they can do it for what they advertise. So they lowballed it and said, oh, it's not a big deal. We'll just make it pass. They're gonna have a 10-member board deciding on this, and it will be for projects that are not by themselves economical.
Feasible
Yeah,
at all.
at all. So you, the taxpayers, are going to pay for having transmission built at $2 million a mile. Ridiculous. Okay, then this maybe John can chime in on too, because this comes right from the Washington State House Republicans caucus, the battle damage assessment. So overall, because of how we're outnumbered in the legislature, you have to take a defensive stance and try to not get some of their bills passed. And that takes all your efforts, so you don't really get to even put forth the bills that are positive. So the anti-sheriff's bill was a big one. That's the one we talked about, where they can appoint new sheriffs. The operating budget, 6.5-hour debate ended at 9:45 p.m. So those two things alone took a little bit of life out of our legislators. So the kill rates were 54% on the Senate side and 25% on the House side. So that speaks well of our legislators. The anti-sheriff's bill, 31 amendments, they tried to amend that thing to death. And as you put forth amendments and you lengthen the debate on one, you're keeping a whole bunch of other bad ones from being enacted. So that's the whole idea behind that. So the fewest Senate bills passed since 2014. That again is the defensive mode. You'd say, well, their job is to pass bills. Well, but you probably don't want the ones passed that raise your taxes. So that's a real positive thing. And then their social media wins were really good. They were able to get people engaged in the process, particularly the millionaire's tax. And there were well over 100,000 people that called in with, or chimed in with their comments on the millionaire's tax. So that was just incredible. And then this, I won't go through, but what I did is I gave you links to all of these bills on the next page, so that if you want to, you can go in and look up the bills and see what they're like. So there are the links. And then at the end, I think Jill is going to send out a copy of this
Sure,
to everybody.
I can do that.
This is really a good issue on what gas prices are likely to do in the state of Washington. Forget about the Iran thing, just focus on the state of Washington due to the Carbon Commitment Act. So I encourage you to look at that. It will scare you to death. So questions of me, and then I'll let John chime in.
Just one quick question. So for every, so the cost of a gallon of gas in the state of Washington, how much of that is the taxes? $1 what per gallon is state taxes?
Well, it depends on how you define tax.
There you go,
If
okay.
you're a Republican, you say anything that government causes to be taken out of your pocket. The Democrats would say, well, it's 54.5 cents per gallon is the quote-unquote sales tax on gasoline, and I think diesel is another 4 or 5 cents a gallon, but the diesel tax is higher. But then you have to add roughly another 60 cents per gallon
Yeah.
because of the Climate Commitment Act.
Yeah.
So you're around $1.10, $1.15 per gallon that Washington State alone is making on a gallon of gas or a gallon of diesel. So what do the feds make? About 18.5 cents per gallon. State of Washington, $1.10, $1.20. The refiners, the people making a gallon of gas, they make 8 to 10 cents per gallon. So that's some perspective on who's profiting the most
Okay.
on the sale of gas and diesel fuel. It's the state of Washington. And that Climate Commitment Act charge will vary because they have quarterly auctions. And the refiners have to go into the open market, and Washington State says, how many permits will we sell you to allegedly emit CO2? And your fuel does that, it's bad, it's evil, and all of those things. So they said, here's the number of permits, and I think it was over $70 per metric ton that they charged at the highest point, but that will vary up and down 50, 60, 70, depending on what is happening in the marketplace. A different aspect of that is 35% of our electricity here in Clark County comes from natural gas at Clark Public Utilities. So they also are involved with that CO2 permit auction, let alone Northwest Natural Gas. If you heat or cook with natural gas, a constituent just came to me, and Northwest Natural Gas just sent out a piece where they are asking the Utilities Commission for a 25% increase tail end of this year, a year later another 5-point-something% increase, and then a year after that another 5% increase. So you're looking rough wag 30 to 35% increase. And the sad, frustrating part is in their PR sales pitch, they do not say a thing about the cost of those carbon permits. But I have no doubt whatsoever the largest share of that is the cost of those carbon permits that they're required to buy per the Climate Commitment Act. And a different aspect of that, and you may be a person that believes CO2 is the most wonderful thing, or you may believe it's the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. One of the realities we faced was that the state of Washington Department of Ecology is required to report to the legislature and you, the people, theoretically every year, how much CO2 did we save? Well, number one, they're a couple of years behind on that report, and we beat them up, but they refused to comply with the law. But they issued a report late December that said they had reduced CO2 by 7.5 million metric tons. And the Seattle Times and the press were, isn't this wonderful? We're saving the planet. Then in January, as we got to the legislature, they said, oops, we made a little error. It was something like 78,000 metric tons. So essentially 1% was all they saved. And to put that in perspective, the Climate Commitment Act has taken over $4 billion out of people's pockets since it got implemented. And yet they're only saving a rounding error in terms of CO2. So if you are the biggest, greenest person in the world, you're spending over $4 billion to essentially save no CO2. You ought to be the most outraged of anybody in the state.
Yeah.
And it's just making our citizens poor. They can't afford it. The cost of the groceries are up because they gotta ship it to the grocery store in a truck. Your utilities are up, both natural gas, your electricity, let alone your gas in your cars and all of that. And so it is truly a scam. It's a bucket of money that the Democrats use for anything they want.
The Democrats never met a tax they didn't like.
Out of your mouth to God's ear.
We music teachers, I think, this is what I understand, they were going to tax us for every little festival that we do with our kids. And, you know, we do a little Baroque classical festival, and they wanted us to charge a tax to each one of those children that played in a little festival that makes no money at all. And my understanding is we got it blocked, so they can't do that to us, because it was just gonna break us. So, but if we did it at Portland Piano, we wouldn't be taxed. But if we do it here at Columbia Press, we'd be taxed.
Yeah.
So one of the bigger issues last year, my first year in the legislature, they passed a $9.5 billion increase in general fund taxes, the biggest tax increase in the history of the state. And the largest piece of that $9.5 billion was around $5.5 billion in business and occupation taxes. And they painted that as, we're just going after these evil rich businesses. Well, one component of the multiple B&O tax increases was a tax on services that were now suddenly subject to the B&O tax that they'd never had to pay before. Well, in late November, early December, I was on a Zoom call with ESD 112, Education Service District. And that is 30 school districts from around Southwest Washington. And every single school administrator talked about how they were getting hammered by this sales tax, B&O tax on services. They might want somebody to be, hi, we want to hire you for 3 weeks to upgrade our IT system. That's a service, and now they were having to pay a tax on it. Or you might have a one-day festival and you say, hey, we're going to go to this private company and get something. Oh, you now have to pay for it. And so every single one of these school districts, it was 6 figures being taken out of their budgets to pay for this tax. And so every single one of them screamed, and while there were multiple issues that they had on funding, overwhelmingly the thing I took away from that 90-minute Zoom call was that if I could fix one thing, it was that. And they got so much pushback, the Democrats rescinded that, so they only got it for 1 year. And then in this updated ledge bill, they rescinded that, which was a good thing. Of course, I would have loved to have rescinded a whole lot more of the business taxes, because ultimately, business doesn't pay the tax. It gets passed on to the consumer.
Yeah, so either one of you, could you talk a little bit about the quote-unquote millionaire's tax and the fact that Jamie Peterson said right off the bat that they will not stop future legislatures from lowering that from millionaires. So talk a little bit about that. And then number 2, could you talk a little bit about the exodus of businesses and people, because people of that income bracket, they often already own homes in other states. So it's really easy for them to leave. And the third thing, I know in the real estate industry, they've already seen a huge uptick in big multi-million-dollar homes going on the market, huge uptick. So we know that there's an exodus, but can either of you talk about
Right up your alley.
and what did you try to do to put amendments on the millionaire tax so it wouldn't go lower? And
So the Democrats want to frame it as a millionaire's tax. And my answer is, it's not a millionaire's tax. It's an income tax with right now, $1 million standard deduction.
right.
And with a simple majority, they can and ultimately will lower that standard deduction until everybody's paying. We talked about the fact that 2 years ago, citizens passed Initiative 2111 that said no income tax in Washington state, and the legislature did not want to put that on the ballot, and so they just adopted it, and that was the law of the land. And so 2 years later, after they passed the law of the land that said no income tax, they ignored that and reversed it. Senator Jamie Peterson, who represents an extremely wealthy district in Seattle with lots of high-tech firms, oodles of money, was caught admitting, well, it's a pie crust promise, Mary Poppins, easily made, easily broken. A different aspect of that was a House member, Representative Springer's been in the House, I think, 15, 18 years, was asked at a Bellevue Chamber of Commerce forum, hey, Senator Peterson said this is pie crust promise, easily made, easily broken. Why should we trust Democrats when they say this is only going to affect millionaires? And Representative Springer said, you shouldn't. He's a Democrat. Don't trust his own party. He knows they have every intention of lowering it and picking people's pockets. we introduced 80 amendments to try and alter, stop this, or make it less bad, less painful. We spent 24 and a half hours debating it on the floor. It was an unbelievable marathon. I sat there the whole time, other than running to the men's room. Most legislators would go take an hour or two on a couch while other members were on the floor in order to get naps. But I thought, as long as I can stand this, my job's to be on the floor. We all took turns debating. We had no clue that we would be able to last that long in debating the amendments and doing what we did. So it was one for the record, Brooks, certainly the longest House debate in anybody's memory going back, you know, forever and ever. So that was our effort to try and stop it. Ultimately, we couldn't. They crammed it through with unbelievable number of half-truths, lies, whatever you want to call it. We need this so that we can support our schools. We're going to feed hungry kids. Every kid's going to get a free lunch in schools. We're going to support working families. We're going to sales pitch, sales pitch, sales pitch. After the session was over, I finally got a chance for a clear head, and I came back and I said, well, we already had a pretty healthy school lunch program in Washington State. So I looked at the numbers. Round numbers, we've got 1 million students in our K-12 system. Right now, before that law was signed, we had 700,000 kids getting free and reduced lunches in the state. So this bill wasn't about feeding those kids. They were already part of the budget and already being fed. It's about feeding rich kids who don't need it, which in essence means it's a lie. The rich kids, hey, they're gonna bring their own. In high school, I've got brother and sister-in-law, and they said 2/3 of the rich kids don't even go to the school lunch. They go off school grounds and go to their favorite fast food joint with their friends in their car, and they're not even eating it. And he says, John, I think it's becomes a slush fund for the school. The school's gonna get paid for 2,000 meals, and if they only serve 1,500, then they scrape the extra $500 into another bucket, and they can use it that way. But they sold it that way. A different aspect was the working families tax credit. Once a year, you can file information with the state of Washington, and based on your income and stuff, you can get a one-time check from the state of Washington, allegedly for the poor. Well, the check will go from a low of $50 up to a max of $1,300. Well, they expanded this to kids 18 to 25, and they're not even required to be married or have children. So it's a give out to young people that ought to be working hard, providing for themselves. And we don't yet have the numbers on how many extra will actually take advantage of it, as well as we've got other, if you will, welfare, food programs, rental assistance programs, whatever, on that. And so it was a nice sales pitch, but based on half-truths or slanting things. And the saddest part is that the free lunches and all of these things, almost none of it was actually in the language of the law. Well, then why could they say that? Well, there's what's called the intent section. And at the very bottom of the bill, in a couple paragraphs, they said, the intent of this language is to provide money for feeding all of our children and for this working families tax credit stuff. Well, in a separate bill was where the money was allocated. And in that separate bill, there was no money allocated for 100% these meals. They kept the money at existing levels. The working families tax credit, we'll see how that spits out. But none of this money is going to come into the state treasury until 2029. And so that means next year we'll pass a new budget for 27 and 28, and then it'll be 2029 when the money comes in that the legislature arm wrestles. So I've got a couple.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you just elaborate a little bit more in terms of how legislature, am I saying that correctly, can enact the intent section that you're speaking to? That really concerns me a lot. And yet I guess I hear you saying, please clarify, it's not an actuality in the bill?
Correct. It's supposed to be, you can get a bill and it might be 20 pages long, or it might be 13 or 1,500 pages long. And you don't have to, but a lot of times on those long bills, at the very end, they put an intent section. Kind of the Reader's Digest condensed version of what the bill is supposed to do. But there is nothing binding about that intent section. And from a different perspective, you can use it, as the Democrats did, to promote something that's not in the actual language of the hundreds or thousands of pages in the bill. And there's nothing in the law that says that misleading statement is illegal or is against the law or whatnot. And in a sense, they create the rules.
So how can that be changed?
Potentially pass a law that says it must accurately reflect, number one, and number two, have an attorney general that would then go enforce it. And sadly, our attorney general is a very partisan Democrat and is looking, I think, to repeat what Bob Ferguson did. Bob Ferguson served as attorney general for 3 years and then became the lead Democrat to become governor. And I suspect our current new attorney general will happily be the governor in waiting 7 years from now when Governor Ferguson potentially doesn't run again. But, you know, I mean, and clearly the victory in all of this is changing the balance of power. In the House, we're down 20 seats, and in the Senate, we're down 11.
So I think I heard that somebody's already taken this to court, because the governor signed it into law. And I don't know the group, but somebody's already
Yes.
challenged it, right?
So
To a
I
Democratic
think
judge.
fourfold, ding, 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 you've been paying attention, thank you.
Democratic.
Democrat judge. So they filed a referendum. We in our state constitution have the ability for a referendum as well as a citizens initiative. Two different vehicles that is provided to us by our constitution. The sole purpose of a referendum is to reverse something the state legislature passed into law. And it just does one thing, reverse it. But the way around that, sadly, is the legislature can call it an emergency and put what's known as an emergency clause on a bill, and then it is no longer subject to referendum. Well, they have abused that for decades, and they are getting more bold about putting emergency clauses on everything. And the logical answer is, wait a minute, the revenue from this bill does not begin trickling into the state until 2029. How on earth can it be an emergency when you're not going to see the revenue for 3 years? It's ridiculous argument on its face. But Brian Haywood of Let's Go Washington, wonderful man, submitted a referendum yesterday, and they already got a ruling back from the Secretary of State, this is illegal. But that's what they expected. Now they're looking at, number one, a court challenge based on that ruling by the Secretary of State. How can you say it's illegal when X, Y, Z? And they'll get some courts involved sooner. Second leg of that one discussion is an initiative. You can do an initiative to the people or an initiative to the legislature. And that is currently being debated amongst the leaders of the state Republican Party, Brian Haywood at Let's Go Washington, and several business groups. Which path do they want to run down? Different facet of that. You could try to do an initiative and have it on the November 2026 ballot. Because right now, this is a raw nerve for Washington citizens, and more are informed and concerned about it. So let's strike while the iron's hot. The challenge is, for an initiative, you have to get about double the number of signatures you need for a referendum. And so we would need a little over 300,000 signatures for an initiative. And if we chose to put it on the November 2026 ballot, we would have to get those 300,000 plus signatures by the 2nd of July, I believe.
Yeah, there's.
Not impossible, but very challenging. The good part of that discussion is Let's Go Washington and Brian Haywood have now run initiatives for 3 or 4 years.
Pretty successful.
And they have collected those initiatives, including the names and the addresses of all the people that signed them. So they've got a database of 1 million plus Washington voters. Doesn't mean some of them haven't moved out of the state, but they, I'm sure, will, whichever path they go down, they will mail each of those people that signed in the past and said, hey, will you please sign the new one? But still, significant challenge to get the 300,000 plus signatures by the 2nd of July. If they do it this year, the good news on that would be everybody in the House and half of the Senate is up for election or re-election in November. So that would remind voters, oh, you voted for or against this tax. Voters would have that ability and that reminder to hold their elected officials accountable. Flip side is, okay, if they go to 2027, then none of the legislators are up for re-election, but it gives them much more time to do that. And from a different perspective, if it were 2027, it would be closer to 2028, and 2028 is when Bob Ferguson is up for re-election. You know, different aspect, but so that's the initiative versus referendum path. There will be lawsuits filed. They just filed one yesterday on the referendum issue. They will file on the constitutionality of the law, and that's going to take a long time. Former Attorney General Rob McKenna has already agreed to take the case. It's going to cost $750,000 plus for him and his firm to do that, and they already have financial commitments from some wealthy people and businesses to fund that effort. But rough wag, that's going to be a year, maybe a year and a half, depending on how fast it goes through the courts. Sure. Don't
Can
be
I have another
bashful.
question? This is a lot, and I don't have that legalistic mind, all that you're speaking to, I appreciate it. So if in fact, an initiative is sanctioned, if you will, possibly in November 2026, right to the people. Help clarify a little bit more, my brain is not tacking in there. It would reverse this millionaire's tax completely, or would there be some variation of that?
It would get put on the
proposed?
ballot, right?
Well, it would be put on the ballot, and
I get that.
part of it is what language do we put in that?
Right.
And the intent, as far as I know, is to reverse
Okay.
Overturn it, yeah.
Senate Bill 6346, which was the income tax bill.
Okay.
This reverses that. One of the challenges in that was we just went through a battle a year ago with the Parents' Bill of Rights via a citizen initiative. And so that was an initiative to the legislature. So the Democrats knew that had overwhelming bipartisan support. They didn't like it, but they knew it had support, so they adopted it. They just said, this is now the law of the land. And parents then had the right to know what was happening to their children in the schools, and both academically, medical care, all of the things that people expressed they wanted. The very next year, they came back, introduced a bill that gutted the law that they had just adopted. And so that is part of the concern we have with, if we get a citizens initiative to reverse the Senate bill and eliminate the income tax, would the Democrats play a similar game, adopt it, and then immediately the next session over a different bill to overturn it?
But we got it but if we get it on the ballot and the people make the decision, then they can't overturn it.
Which is part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Do we do an initiative to the legislature?
Or to the initiative to
Or
the
an
people.
initiative to the people?
Yeah.
You know, a little different path, but
Yeah.
it gets crazy, screwy. Third aspect of this, of course, is the lawsuit ultimately
Yeah.
before the Supreme Court. My dear friend Rick talked about Judge Dave Larson. There are 5 of the 9 seats on the state Supreme Court up for election this fall. So I can easily say that is the most important
Yeah.
issue that'll be on the November ballot, is choosing that. And what I've heard so far is we have 4 challengers we found in Washington State to challenge the very liberal people that are either appointed or about to be appointed or who are gonna run for it. One of the individuals the governor just appointed to fill a vacancy, and the game becomes, you're elected to a 6-year term, and then you do your second term, and then you say, I wanna retire. Well, instead of retiring and working to the end of your term, you resign a year early. And then the governor appoints your replacement, and now you run as the incumbent on the Supreme Court, and then you get elected and you're off and running. Well, one of the individuals the governor just appointed, I think it was last week, has 0 experience as a lawyer, or not as a lawyer, as a judge. He's a lawyer, he's a political individual, he raises huge amounts of money for Democrat causes as a lawyer, but he's never been a judge.
Now he's on the Supreme
And
Court.
yet the governor just appointed him to the state Supreme Court, which sadly shows the political nature of what's going on. But we will have at least 4 good people, and hopefully they can find a 5th to inform the voters and say, this is the most important issue in November 2026, getting some balance on the Washington State Supreme Court. And Judge Dave Larson is a phenomenal guy.
Yeah.
Met him and happy to be a champion for him.
Yeah.
Anyway, sure.
Are there, Jill and anybody else here, including our guest speaker, can you recommend any particular classes at Clark College or any other gatherings that be open to the citizenry, you know, whether Republicans, I happen to be an independent. I need to be more educated, and I believe many other people do, in terms of how the legislature works, because you're bringing up a lot of important information in terms of how things can be maneuvered and re-maneuvered and not followed legally, and it's very concerning.
I don't know anything at Clark
Yeah,
College.
And I mean, you talked about John Jay's class,
Yeah,
and I haven't sat through any particular class.
Yeah.
Part of the challenge is learning tidbits, what bites of the apple can you take and digest as you learn. The Clark County Republican women do a wonderful
Yeah.
job at having fun and educating, and every other month they will have events, some with candidates, some with issues. That way, we've got some alternative news sites. The Washington State Standard is a small piece of a national X standard, the Oregon standard, the Kansas standard, but the Washington State standard, wonderful set of reporters that are actual journalists. And they write wonderful stories. They're only on the internet. And great source of information. A different online news media,
Clark County Today.
Clark County Today, here in the county, tries to do it. They're a very small staff, 3 people.
Thank you.
And my dear friend Rick, always Mr. Information. Thanks, buddy. A different website, the Center Square. And again, some wealthy individuals put it together, and their focus is what's in the center of the political spectrum. Not far left, not far right, but they've got some wonderful reporters.
Randy Cruz.
And that's news media, and then we get alternate sources, like Brandy Cruz used to be a reporter, I think, for Como. But one of the TV stations for close to 20 years, and now started a podcast, and she has guests, she talks issues, and sometimes it might be 5 to 10 minutes, and other times she may give you 20 to 30, but she does a wonderful job, and part of us in our job is to find additional information and perspective.
She's an independent too.
And
Yay,
she's,
Randy. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, she was a Democrat. She
Yeah.
voted against Trump
Yeah.
in 2016, and then saw her business, journalism, going so far
Yeah.
out of control, being
Propaganda.
so non-journalistic in presenting both sides of the story. She said, I can't do it anymore, and started her own little media company and podcast. And Brandy is just wonderful, amazing. Here's a hint on how wonderful she is. The Speaker of the House, Lori Jenkins, elected by the Democrats, denied her a press pass to be able to sit in the House with the rest of the press and report on what we're doing, because they thought she was too biased. And she says, what's biased about presenting
Truth.
the facts? And in a sense, every reporter is biased in what are they listening to, what facts more important, do they put it near the front of the story or bury it in paragraph number 18 of a 19-paragraph story or whatever. But she was denied, and so she filed a lawsuit. Sadly, the wrong kind of judge denied her lawsuit. There's rumors of an appeal, but that becomes part of the challenge, is how do we get the word out? And obviously, this is a delightful way that we can just interact and answer people's questions, as well as try to get the word out on issues you care about in alternate ways. Yeah.
Are we gonna get rid of mail-in ballots?
Oh, should
No.
we go to another topic?
Not completely.
Okay.
Um,
When did it change? I mean, for over 50 years, I showed up to vote. And then one year, it went to mail-in, and I thought, did we vote on that? I don't remember that.
Gee, Rick, I think you're probably even a better guru on this than me, my friend.
I don't remember the date, but I do remember it was in the 70s that they started playing with it in the state, and I think it was in the early 2000s
Yeah.
that they converted completely to mail-in
Yeah.
ballots. I don't remember the exact date, but I like you, went in and voted in person.
Yeah.
It's a huge problem to turn that back around again.
I mean, because I got ballots after my parents passed away.
Yeah.
I could have voted for them.
So there is an effort on to do that, to return to precinct voting.
Yeah.
And I just sat through a meeting today with the Election Integrity Network, which is a national network that is promoting that. And they talk about all the things that you need to do in order to get that back into place. place, and we're working on it. I can't tell you if or when it will happen, but we are definitely working on it. And I might give a quick plug for our election integrity team. We do this kind of thing every month on the third Thursday, and we welcome anybody who wants to come. So we would love to have independents. We have Democrats show up sometimes, and we just talk about the issues and what the problems are. So it'd be much like this, and we would invite you to come to that.
Yep.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, can the Department of Justice still look at our voter rolls even though they passed that law?
Yes.
So they can.
So the Department of Justice gets to look at it because they get control of federal elections. So they may not be able to get into local or state elections, but they're just waiting for the Save America Act to get passed. And if it gets passed, it pretty much neutralizes the Secretary of State.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, in
Oh,
a different
my
aspect
goodness, I
of
was
that,
watching.
yeah, it's delightful people are chatting, but the Save America is for federal elections, but
Yeah.
the federal government gives each state money to help conduct the election. And so if Governor Ferguson and our Secretary of State say, we're not complying, then the feds, number one, will withhold the money. Number two, one possibility is if Washington State goes and the Secretary of State says, well, we ignored federal law, and in November of 2026, here are the elections results, the federal government could say, you did not comply with federal law, therefore your election was null and void.
Ooh.
What? Well, how can you do that? Well, now you start the food fight, but that's part of what the Democrats have to put into their calculus on, do they want to ignore the law? Or do they comply grudgingly? Will they avoid taking the money? Any number of things, but it remains to be seen how all that'll play out, that they become pressure points for the federal government to get more control.
Well,
So,
I'm
my
sorry,
friend.
our hour is up. Sorry, I know we could talk for a lot longer, but I did bring a couple, Rick brought a couple things, I have something back there. So I have a sheet on debunking the myths about the Save America Act. There's a long list there, I won't go into them right now. And then Rick brought a couple things. It says, is the Secretary of State Hobbs really just protecting your voter information? So some things about that. And then the U.S. Citizens Election Bill of Rights. So those are on the back table. So if you have any other questions, feel free to stick around and pick their brains. But other than that, our time is up, so please put your chairs away. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Make yourself useful.